Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be working on Revelation chapter 8, and hopefully we'll be able to make progress through it and finish the whole book. We had a chance. I don't know if y'all know chapter. Well, you know, got to be positive, and we had dinner with Eric and Jen Harper last night. Who was?
Oh, how are they?
They're fabulous, and their son is 6 years old, and he is a hoot. He is a hoot. Last time we saw him, he was in his diapers, but he was a mess. He is, yeah, he is a good boy. He's a good boy. But we were talking about Sunday school because they were part of the first class with Jessica and Jeremiah and a few others, and we were talking about we did Revelation once there as well, but I used Warren Wiersbe's book, and she said, "Oh yeah," she said, "I remember what class was like." She said, "You would go, well, we got through 3 verses today." I said, "Yeah, I still have days like that." But yeah, that was a group. That was a challenging group. Definitely was. But anyway, it was good to see them. We hadn't seen them since Paul's going away luncheon, and we really didn't get to talk that day. We just kind of saw them real quick. So.
Where did they move to? Yeah.
Eatonton, and they're in a charter school. It's pre-K through 12, and they love it. I mean, they really are enjoying it. So, and Andrew's in kindergarten. Really should probably be in first grade, to be honest with you, but he's in kindergarten. So it was good. It was nice to get together with them and kind of pick up. It's always nice, you know, when you get together with people that you knew and you just kind of like you pick up where you left off. It's not like odd or awkward silence and you're like, oh, what should I ask them? It's like boom, right in. So anyway, I told Jen, I said, the one thing, I said, I gotta tell you this. I don't know if I told you this or not before, but every time I hear the song, Free to Dance, I think of you, because whenever we'd sing that in church, I would look back to her and Eric, and she would just be, you know, the way she was, she'd be like, you know. But we don't sing that song much anymore. It's been a long time. All right, so that was our exciting weekend. So we're in chapter 8, and we have reached the point where the 7th seal has been broken. And the 7th seal, as we talked about last week, is when the 7 trumpets take place. So we've gone through the whole scroll. The whole scroll has been opened now. Now the 7 trumpets appear. And then this is just a review of what the seals were. And if you remember, between the 6th seal and the 7th seal, there was this pause. There was this parenthesis, if you will, where there's John's writing about what's going on there in heaven. Okay, and we have that half hour of silence. That's kind of the calm before the storm. That was the last thing that we left at. So we're going to pick up there, verse 1. It says, when the Lamb broke the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. That'd been really weird if there were 7 seals standing before God.
They can blow trumpets.
They can blow trumpets. Anyway, my mind just goes sometimes. I have no control over it. We've got that silence, and as we talked about, I think maybe a little bit last week, but if you've ever been through a hurricane, there's that lull, like everything just kind of like stops. You know, there's no wind, there's no birds, there's nothing, just like this dead. And all of a sudden, boom, it hits you. And that's kind of what this is. You know, when we look through the Bible, oftentimes when God is going to bring something, judgment or something's going to happen, it's announced with either a trumpet or a loud voice. But in this case, it's silence. It's dead silence. Now think about where we are at this particular point. John is in heaven. What's been going on all this time? The angels and the elders and the people under the altar have been doing what? Praising and worshiping And constant, just constant, all the time. And all of a sudden, boom, nothing. Now, I don't know if you need this, but since I have sleep issues, we have Google do the sound of the storm. Rain, sound of the rain. So it plays it all night long. Sometimes Google decides it's tired of playing it and just stops.
And you wake up.
And I wake up and it's like, wow, it's way too quiet in this house. So I gotta get it going again. And that's just with the machine making the noise. So you know that it's just, when that happens, everyone's attention's on like, what's gonna happen? Something's coming, something's gonna happen. And so
Like before a storm.
Exactly.
Silence before the storm.
That's right, exactly. So that period is half an hour. Now, okay, we're talking about being in a dimension where there is no time, right? They're in heaven, there is no half hour, there's no hour, it's eternity, both directions. So really, usually an hour means, in the Bible, it means it's coming quickly. So if John is writing, it's coming in a half hour, it's like we're right there, it's coming any moment. And it's this anticipation that we're just about to have that happen. Now, when we read when the Lamb broke the seventh seal, just before that, if you recall, God was dealing with the martyrs that were underneath the altar. And what were they requesting?
For vengeance.
Vengeance, right? Vengeance for the blood vengeance. They were wanting God to be their kinsman redeemer, to redeem their lives through vengeance. And God said, just wait a little while. And then the next thing is what? The silence. So it's possible that this next step is in response to their cries for judgment. Okay? So we've got 7 angels now, and I'll probably say 7 seals, so just kind of ignore that. But we've got seven angels. And the question is, of course, 7 is just the magic number in Revelation. And I used magic not really magic, but these angels, there's a school of thought in Jewish theology, and it's angelology and demonology. And we have it in Christianity as well. I mean, we've kind of picked up some of that stuff. But in the theology of angels in the Hebrew world, there were 7 angels that stood before the throne that served God. I believe they're also mentioned in the book of Enoch as well. And these 7 angels, I'll write these up here for you. She left. Okay. So the first one is Raphael. Okay. And if you notice that there's that L on there, what's L mean? God. So anytime you see L at the end of a word, it means that person is something of God. So Raphael is the God has healed, because it's like Rapha.
Oh, Raphael.
What? Oh. Okay. The next one, I missed this one, is the first one.
I know. Where'd you get these names?
I made them up.
I figured.
I play this game called
Name the angel.
Name the angel.
I got them from Name the Angel.
Tom Bradford.
Yeah. Remember, he's the one that does the Jewish perspective on all this stuff. This is part of, these names are from the Jewish angelology.
How do you spell that second one? You want now?
Uriel?
It's like Ariel, right?
Ur-
Close to it? No?
No.
You have
No, this has nothing to do with Disney.
No, I was thinking Disney. I was
I know.
thinking, well, it's an Old Testament name. It means like lion of God or something. Oh, okay.
Fire of what?
Okay, Uriel means fire of God.
I wonder if that's where Uriel got his name. Our car guy's name is Uriel, and I've never
Maybe.
heard of that.
Yeah, because I think Catholics are really big on these 7 angels. A lot of them I found were Spanish versions of these.
No, okay.
So I suspect that that's where they came from. So then you got Raguel. It's not Rag. And his name means friend of God. Michael.
Spelled the right way.
She knows what
I
it means.
pointed that out to my wife, she's snickered.
What?
What did you point out?
E.L., Michael, E.L.
What did you say? What is
What's
Michael
Michael
say?
say? What?
Michael.
Who is like
Michael's
God.
who is like God.
Okay.
Then you got I wouldn't want this name. Sariel. He's not so good as all. He's the sorry one. That means Prince of God. The sixth one is, I'm sure you've all have heard of Gabriel. And he is, God is my strength. And then the seventh one is Remiel, and that means thunder of God.
Hey, Greg?
Yes,
The
sir.
one on the board is different.
Yeah,
All
it says
different.
the,
Did you
That
say
kid.
thunder of God?
Yeah, that's what, well, this is probably the Hebrew
sorry.
Hebrew version of these are the Greek, these are the English
Oh,
versions of it.
okay.
These are the, would be the,
Yeah, they didn't like the Sariel either.
no, that didn't like it either. So, I couldn't find that matched these, they all were either in Spanish, which changed it, or they were in this version, so, anyway, I'm just giving you,
Okay.
it's just a, don't
Okay.
ignore that, it's just.
Try to give somewhat of a visual and.
Yes,
name.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so whether that's what these are or not, we don't know. But there is this theology out there that says there are 7 that have those names. Okay? So maybe that's who that is. All right, verse 3. Another angel came and stood at the altar holding a golden censer, and much incense was given to him so that he might add it to the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense ascended from the angel's hand with the prayers of the saints before God. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and hurled it to the earth. And there were peals of thunder and sounds and flashes of lightning and an earthquake. And the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound them. All right, so we've had this long period of silence, and then we have these 7 angels, and then an 8th one appears, and the 8th one has a censer that has incense in it. Now, if you've ever been to a Catholic church, they have the priest walking around waving that. Yeah.
Only during high mass.
Only during high mass? Okay. Now, when I was in Israel and we went to the site where the Catholics and Eastern Orthodox believe Jesus was crucified, there's a cathedral built there, and they're walking around
It's
doing
just
it.
like that.
Yeah. And so the idea here is that the smoke represents the prayers rising to God. So again, this follows after the martyrs have petitioned God. And so it's this idea of, could it be those requests? Yes, it could. Could it also be the accumulated prayers from every nation as well? It could be. We don't know. But whatever it is, it's a lot of prayers. Okay? Now, what's interesting is that first those prayers, that incense, the smoke, represents the prayers. But then God takes those prayers and uses them to cause destruction on earth. So that kind of gives you the idea this is maybe a fulfillment. Perhaps the incense is those that are looking for justice, because that's the completion of the process, their prayers going up and then coming back down and causing destruction on earth. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people believe that these are the prayers of those that have been martyred. Okay? Make sense? Maybe. All right. So things on earth. Again, don't forget that we talked about those 4 angels last week. They're at the 4 corners of the world. What they're supposed to do? Stop the wind, right? So even on earth, there's dead silence. And then the next thing that they hear and see is the result of those prayers. The earthquakes and the lightning and the thunder. That's the next thing that they see. Okay? All right, so we're on to the first angel. the first trumpet. It says, the first sounded, and there was hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled to the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. So we're working in the threes again. So we've got the first one, and it was hail and fire mixed. Right? And the result was 1/3 of the earth and trees and green grass. Now, what's funny about this, maybe I shouldn't say it, I don't want to be disrespectful, but one of the guys I watch he says, just imagine driving down the street and seeing every third blade of grass on fire and every third tree on fire. I was like, dude.
You've got to be kidding.
That's what he said. But and there's even a question about how we interpret this 1/3. Is it a region that makes up 1/3 of the earth that's being impacted, or is it every region has 1/3 of its region impacted? And we don't really know. We just know whatever is going to happen, it's going to be devastating. It's going to have worldwide impact. So, and I always kind of assumed that it was all over the world, and 1/3 of the world was going to be impacted. And it's very possible that that's the way it is, but there's another way of looking at it that we at least need to be considering. Is it 1/3? So could it be, if you took, where would you think that 1/3 would be centered around?
Well, my opinion with the 1/3
Yes?
is, you look at a map, I just see North and South America separated for everything else. And there's a lot of stuff, produce and stuff comes out of North and South America. And I know at the end of this book, they're marshaling armies for Armageddon and everything. And it sounds like it's mainly from the east, which is China and all of this. I'm wondering, just from reading it, if North and South America aren't going to get the brunt of these 1/3 devastations because they're separated, but they would
Could
have
be.
an impact.
Yeah, it could be. I hadn't really thought about that. I was thinking more like the Middle East, because that's where all of this part of Revelation now is being focused on. The 144,000, that's where that's the region. But it's very possible that, that makes sense. That makes sense. There are a lot of end time theologians who do not see the United States involved in Revelation at all. That we're not even a player. Which is different from when I was in high school, because they talk about the eagle and the bear, and well, who's the eagle?
The United States.
Us. But way things are going, we're probably not going to be a player. And it would kind of make, there's another sense to it. I don't have scripture to support this, but it would make sense that if we've always sold ourselves as a Christian country, that because we've gone as far down as we have, that would be evidence to the rest of the world that there's judgment coming. So it's a good point. Good job, Bert. Good job. So we've got this 1/3. So really what's being attacked here in this first one is land. All right. And again, you're talking about the green grass and trees and earth. The crops are going to be devastated, not just wheat and barley and oats, but you're talking about fruits. The famine is going to increase. It just has to, because there's not going to be enough food for everybody, right? So, the second one is in verse, and again, we don't know what this hail and fire mixed with blood is from. I'm sure it could be something from, it could be a natural event that now has supernatural perspective to it. Or it could be the fallout from some kind of nuclear destruction. Just at this point, really there's not enough information for us to tell really where it's coming from, but at any rate. So the next prophet, number 2, is verse 8. The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was hurled to the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures which were in the sea, and had life died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Okay, so this is obviously this is the book, the chapter of thirds. So now we've got a great mountain that with fire was hurled into the sea. So now we've got the sea is being attacked, and we've got the creatures and sea life, flesh eaters. And it's a third of those. So now what's being attacked is sea, which is salt water. So the land is attacked, and that's going to impact the foods that we get from the ground. Now the sea is being impacted, and it's going to cause the fish a third of the fish to die. Okay, how many use fish in their diet? You've got the creature, what is it? You've got the creatures which live in the sea, or so that a third of the sea being impacted and a third of the ships. So now commerce is being impacted as well because a third of the ships are gone. And that'll probably include some of the dinghies down at the yacht club, but we're talking really the commercial ones that are going to be heavily impacted. And so now we're going to have, think about the, how do we get oil from one country to another? Ships, right? Tankers. And so you got products that are being manufactured, being shipped by sea. So you're going to have all that stuff's going to be impacted now. And so you've gone from the land, and now you've gone to the sea. And these are things that are much more highly impacted than the first seals that we saw where this was happening. And now we're seeing it increases. If you remember, I drew that fabulous infographic. We start here and we end here with the. As we move along from 7 to 7 to 7, it gets more and more and more and more intense. Okay? So,
Nothing. I'll talk to you later.
Oh, I was just curious, with that, it sounds like it's one event, it's one mountain. I wonder if there's a likely target on this globe that would, if something big hit, would affect a third, like maybe the Atlantic Ocean. I would think the Pacific Ocean would be too big to affect a third.
well, remember we looked at the size of those asteroids? Wormwood, well, hadn't come yet, it's coming. It said it's like a mountain.
Yeah.
So it's not a mountain. And some translators, not translators, some thank you, commentators, interpreters of the Revelation believe this represents a government. Because a lot of times mountains are used to represent governments in the Old Testament. But more than likely, it wouldn't make, kind of in the sense of all the things that are happening, a government wouldn't make sense with all the other natural events that are being taken care of. So what was it that John saw that he was trying to use in his verbiage, first century AD, to express to us what it was? So it was something that looked like a large mountain. It wasn't a mountain, it was like a great mountain. So the only thing that I can think of that would look like a great mountain would be a huge asteroid hitting the Earth. Or what?
Coming down that way.
Yeah, coming down.
Nuclear.
I guess, I'm trying to think because he had no idea what a nuclear bomb would look like, but
Yeah.
does that really even look like a mountain?
But if you look at the
It
mushroom
does.
effect from, the explosion, then I could see how he would describe it as a mountain.
And maybe if he's seeing that, like if a mountain did come down, that's the kind of thing it would cause.
Yeah.
So he's saying the bomb was like a great mountain because of what it caused, not because it looked like a great mountain.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I was just wondering geographically if there was a likely spot where that would hit, that would cause that.
Ask the science genius over here.
Pressure's on.
Pressure's on, don't
I don't-
sweat.
I don't know.
No.
I would
who
think
knows?
it would have to be one of the major oceans, obviously.
Yeah.
so.
Well, I would think,
Whether it's Pacific or Atlantic,
I would look at the one that's got the most trade on it, ocean trade. I mean, which is more traveled most, the Pacific or the Atlantic? I would think, I
I
don't know.
would think the Atlantic, because it's closer together
Yeah,
than, that's
Well-
just my guess. Shipping.
size-wise, if we took the Pacific, would that come out to about a third of all the other ones put together? Maybe not.
no, it's the largest.
But anyway, that's just conjecture on our part, what it is and where it's happening. But, you know, maybe it would make sense that if we just say the North and South, North America and South America were the place where the first trumpet happened, it would make sense that the second thing would impact them again, because they would just keep getting pounded and pounded. And that would certainly mess up what trade there was left coming from the United States and South America, that much more. So again, that's all conjecture. We don't know where it's going to happen, but it's kind of fun to play with it. All right, so you've got the third again, and this is the seawater that's being impacted, the salt water. All right, any questions? No. All right, so verse 10. The third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of waters. The star is named Wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the waters because they were made bitter. So now we've got the third one is wormwood. And that impacted fresh water. Okay, so that'd be, all right. So, and it's not just the rivers, it's the springs. So, you know,
The rivers, the springs.
hmm, what?
I was trying to read the three things, because it.
Rivers
there's
and
that
springs.
pattern.
So you've got, springs are obviously the source of a lot of fresh water. So you're not gonna get your Evian during this particular time because it comes from the spring. So now there's not gonna be respite for a third of the world's population for water. And the sad thing is that people are probably gonna go ahead and try and drink it anyway. You've all heard stories of sailors that have been on the ocean, yeah, and they get so thirsty they'll just drink the salt water because they go delirious, and it pretty much kills them because there's way too much salt. So this wormwood, and it's interesting because NASA actually has an asteroid named Wormwood, and it's pretty big. And wormwood is something that the ancient writers would have been very familiar with. We're not really that familiar with it. The Greek word for this is absinthos, and it just means bitter. So wormwood is a plant that you can, if you Google wormwood, it's a plant it's very bitter. And the water is going to be undrinkable. The fresh water is going to be undrinkable. Well, you know, without fresh water, there's not a whole lot you can do. You know, so the downstream, if you will, of attacking the fresh water is now the fish are going to die, people are going to die, plants are going to die. You know, so it's this, there's a cumulative effect that's taking place here beyond what we actually read in this particular verses. Bert?
Yeah. Opinion of Bert on this as well. I'm glad you brought up, I didn't know about the asteroid, but I did see this on like wormwood. We name stuff like comets, we name big enough asteroids, we give them names.
Right.
That's what makes me go towards that, but I'm more inclined to think it might be something like a comet. Because it's not talking about any big impact when it hits, it's talking about poisoning the waters. So comets to me are made of water, fluid, something poisonous. And I'm thinking it's maybe hitting somewhere up in Canada, because all of those rivers flow south. So if it's something that can poison the water, it would just naturally drain down to the continent. I don't know, that was just what I was always thinking when I read that, but. Bird's
It
opinion.
could be, but the Wormwood, NASA's name is an asteroid, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
It's supposed to be. a
I always
path for
pictured it in
hitting
my
us, yeah.
mind as a comet.
And
because
that
of
makes
the-
your makes sense, that it would release, cause it would be mostly ice. Hadn't thought about that, and I don't think anybody ever, that I've watched on this or done the commentaries, viewed the viewpoint of a comet. You know, there's some that even think that, this could be another nuclear explosion. But
It's an asteroid.
it's an asteroid,
Yeah.
Wormwood, did they say how big it is?
No, but it says that the Earth is safe for 100 years.
Really?
Another
Okay.
thing,
So we'll stop doing Revelation.
32,000
I'll let my great grandson teach the class.
I heard-
32,000 kilometers. That's something.
Wow.
I heard this one teacher on TV speak in his theory, and I did not agree with this, but apparently Wormwood and all that in Russian is Chernobyl.
Yes.
And he was trying to connect that to Chernobyl, but I do not think it fits with what's in Revelation at all, because that was a plant, and this is something that's falling
Yeah.
down to the
I've seen
earth.
that as well.
Yeah, I just
I've
didn't.
seen that as well. Again, you know, we're some of the stuff these are just ideas that we're discussing. There's nothing in scripture that necessarily says one thing or the other. It's us trying to figure this out. So all we know is that it's going to be something that comes down and it's going to poison the water, the fresh water.
Right.
And 1/3 of the earth will be impacted. Okay? All right.
That's too big.
It's too big?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 340 meters, my bad.
Okay. Yeah. Verse 12, the fourth angel sounded, and 1/3 of the sun, 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars were struck, so that 1/3 of them would be darkened, and the day would not shine for 1/3 of it, and the night in the same way. So now we've got the fourth angel, fourth trumpet, and it is the heavens, the sky. And so we've got the sun, the moon, and stars, thank you. Okay? Now, when it says 1/3 of, you're not gonna see like 1/3 of the sun go dark. What it's talking about here is the luminescence effect. So sunlight would be cut by 1/3. All right, the impact of the sun would be cut by 1/3.
It won't be an eclipse?
No, I shouldn't say no because I wasn't there with John, but most likely not. It's going to be something that's going to have a devastating impact on the earth. An eclipse wouldn't cut, the moon and the sun have to be matched up for quite a while for that to have that kind of impact.
Right. And eclipses, the way that they work, it would not be across the entire Earth.
Right,
It would only be in
right.
certain regions
Right.
that you would see that.
So
Oh, excuse me.
think about, it's okay, you're fine. So think, Miss Linda, it's okay.
You can answer to again.
Yes.
I'll get it right next time.
So you could think about the impact, what's happened beforehand, and let's assume that it is an asteroid or it is a fireball comet coming down to the Earth. The devastation could kick up a lot of dust, right? And if you think back to when Mount St. Helens erupted, there was that cloud that caused a reduction in the sunlight
Right.
because of the dust that was kicked up. So these things aren't like
It was a big mess.
happening and, boom, okay, and everything cleans up and boom, then everything, it's kind of like a cumulative effect. You see them starting to build on each other. So it's possible that there's going to be this, and that's why a lot of people feel like that this is maybe fallout from a nuclear explosion, that the nuclear dust from it, and I may not be using the right terms, but will block a good portion of the sun coming through. Now, I want you to think about something. that we wouldn't even thought about 5 years ago. What would that impact?
Solar power.
What?
Solar power.
Solar power. We have countries, there's this huge movement to go to solar power, right? They don't care about that. So think about if the world gets to a point where they're so dependent on solar power, and then the source of that power is darkened by a third, this becomes even more inefficient, right? And to me, it seems like it's making sense that we're kind of setting ourselves up for a lot of this stuff to have an impact.
We only got about 10 years left then, according to the scientists.
No,
Or AOC,
Yeah.
the bartender.
Yeah.
According to the bartender. So, I mean, again, we're starting to see things that wouldn't even existed, issues that wouldn't have existed 100 years ago, 10 years, 10 years ago. So the solar power and the wind power we're going to talk about would not have been impacted. But we're moving to a point where it's going to be more impacted. And it's funny because I saw an ad on Facebook for the Tesla solar panels while I was doing this thing.
Oh, no.
And there's supposed to be some special grant program where you can get them cheap or whatever. But think about that if we are so dependent on the sun, which has always been, and see the thing is that stuff that you and I have always taken for granted will be there is now being taken away. So our whole world will be messed up. Now, you and I won't be here, so we don't have to worry about this, in my opinion. In my opinion, we're gone at this point. And this is why when you talk about these kinds of things, this is not like we saw where the weather's going to change and a little bit. These are massive changes in the environment in the world, and this is clearly a product of God's wrath.
It just, now that you brought this up about solar power, it just made me think about the other energy resources that we use that are renewable or even non-renewable. So like the wind turbines that we have, that would already have been impacted because the winds stopped.
Right.
Biofuels, ethanol, like we wouldn't be able to produce as much ethanol because we don't have the crops to be able to
Or the cows.
produce it, or the cows. So,
Oh, they produce methane, I forgot.
yeah, methane. But there are other ways that those energy sources would not be there,
Right.
or we wouldn't be able to use them, so it's,
And then think about it, if the oil industry is trying to ratchet back up to fill the gap, a third of your ships are gone. So now you have no wind, you have no, essentially no solar power, and no
Yeah.
oil.
one of the, another big thing is that they have to mine, what is it? There's, in Canada, in order to develop the 100% electric cars, Tesla, they have to mine in Canada to get the ores of refined metals, and then they have to ship it across to Europe and Asia in order to manufacture the batteries to put into these cars.
So it's going from Canada to Europe, back to the United States?
Yes,
No wonder it's so expensive.
yes. And it's actually not environmentally friendly either, so unless you're using that vehicle for 20 years, then it decreases.
Well, we don't know
the
how long the
environment.
batteries are really gonna last.
Right, right.
That's my question is, okay, so you're not burning gasoline, and you're not throwing, these, you'll have that pollution, but what do you do with the batteries? I mean, when they're dead, they're dead. So what are you gonna do? Bury them out in the ocean, bury them no one's talking about that, but, we just, we try to make things better, we just make them worse.
I think so. I think too that we had a
Back to the
tiny
horse
peak.
and buggy.
What?
We had a tiny peak into the solar problem this past winter when Texas had their problem,
Mm-hmm.
and how that felt, how the solar panels
Yeah.
fell and all.
Yeah. Of course, some of that was because they didn't,
They weren't
the-
planned
the-
for, I know.
well,
Yeah.
the contractor who built them didn't build them to spec. Cause I guess he assumed that because they're in Texas, we're never gonna be under these cold conditions.
Exactly.
That, those weather vanes are what being used over in Norway or someplace like that where it's like freezing cold all winter long and they work fine. So part of it was human laziness, trying to save some money and not doing what they were supposed to be doing. But, you know, if you're talking about, everything that we're talking about is going to have, when you cut back and thinking beyond that, when you cut back on the sunlight, that's gonna impact the wind. That's gonna impact the temperature. That's gonna impact, and there's other things that we're not thinking about that the sun has. It's kind of like when your back goes out, all of a sudden you realize how important it is to other parts of your body to have a back that's healthy. Because, you know, it just has such a huge impact on your body. The same thing's gonna happen when we're talking about the stuff up in the sky. They have an impact, and now you're talking about also the moon being affected. Well, what's that gonna do to tides?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and will the kids be off the chain all the time? I guess not, because there won't be a full moon. So the kids will be behaved. But, so everything that the moon impacts is now gonna be impacted less efficiently because there's not gonna be as much illumination from it. Okay? Because the sun's being impacted. It would make sense. The sun's impacted, the moon's gonna be impacted. And then the sky, the stars are gonna start going out.
Well, they're already.
Right, but I mean, we're talking about a third of it, all of a sudden, poof. So it's gonna be very dark and probably very depressing, I would think.
It's gonna be a terrible time.
Yeah, it's not gonna be fun. Not gonna be fun. All right. So anything else on those?
Just one thing, I'm reminded of your Exodus study, with the
Bless you,
plagues.
Bert. Bless you.
And I mean, no, one really good point that you brought up
Points.
was that part of each of these judgments was he was basically humiliating one of the gods they worshipped.
Right.
What are our gods today? Technology,
Mhm.
commerce.
Yep.
I wonder if there's a pattern with that as well.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. I mean, you know, and when we talk about technology and commerce and government, it's all part of what we would call the Babylonian system. You know, where everything is kind of, it's all about the things and not about the spiritual aspect of it. So, you know, and Babylon has always been kind of the overarching term for the satanic system in the world. I mean, that was the first place where man came together and rebelled against God in a large group with the Tower of Babel. So, you know, I think definitely so. I mean, we look at everything that we try to do, and we praise the powers of technology, of science, of medicine, of commerce. You know, all that stuff. So yeah, I would think that's a valid observation, that those are the things that God's saying, look, without me, it's nothing. Nothing. Okay? I can't think of anything else that would be impacted by the moon going dark. Can you? Do you?
That would be a night, it's gonna be a.
It'd be very dark.
Songwriters are gonna have a hard
Oh,
time.
yeah. I looked up at the cloudy moon. I knew you'd be here very soon.
Well, actually, I would think about the behavior of animals because
Yeah.
a lot of the way that they act is based off of the moon phases.
So, again, we're looking at a broader impact than just, oh my gosh, the sun's not nearly as bright as it was yesterday.
I wonder how technology and all that would be impacted by the first one, the fire. Cellular connections, electronics, all that.
This
kind
one
of
here?
stuff. Yeah.
Earth, the trees, and the grass. I mean, I
they didn't have
suppose
that
all
back
of,
then,
right, I
so-
suppose all of that could be impacted in some way, probably not so much here, but I think that, kind of jumping on what Bert was saying was, as we move down this way, it's becoming more and more personal. Here it's just general, right? And then I think maybe we get down to here where Wormwood is, we're gonna start seeing some of those issues. I would think if the sun is impacted, who knows, will it be flaring? I don't know, but possible. I mean, it's possible. It's gonna impact us in ways we can't even think of right now. So, possibly, I just don't know. Okay, then verse 13, then I looked and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to those who live on the earth because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. All right, so the eagle is saying, whoa, whoa.
That's what mine says.
Well, right, it's the same idea. Again, this is repeated 3 times. And we've talked about before, when something's repeated 3 times, what is it meant to signify?
Watch out.
Yes, it's beyond normal. When we talk about God, holy, 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 he's beyond holy. Okay? So, whoa, whoa, whoa means you thought it was bad now, the worst is yet to come. That's nothing compared to what's coming. Now, what's interesting is that this is the eagle that's saying this. Now, you and I living in the United States, when we read this, what do we think of?
Automatically think of our nation.
Yes, we think of our nation, we think of the noble eagle flying. And that's because we live in the United States where the eagle is our national bird. You all realize, don't you, that Benjamin Franklin wanted it to be a turkey.
Yep.
Yes.
Then-
You can get
So I guess we'd be eating eagle on Thanksgiving as opposed to turkey.
I saw
But at any rate-
caramel turkeys this morning.
Any rate, in the Old Testament, and the readers would have known this, there is one word for 2 different types of birds, or two birds. And it's, I wrote it down. Hold on 1 second. Aitus, A-E-T-U-S, Aitus, and it means bird of prey or vulture. So this very well could not be an eagle. It could be a vulture. But in the Old Testament, the eagle was not considered a noble bird. It was unclean. And it was associated with a buzzard, with a vulture. So it's an unclean bird that's flying. It's not this noble bird. It's not the United States going, hey, look out. It's not this noble bird. It's an unclean vulture.
It's not
Who's-
to be eaten.
Huh?
It's not to be eaten.
No, it's not to be eaten. It's not food.
Right.
And it's unclean. And the reason is because they eat, dead stuff.
Sounds like the vulture is getting ready to eat.
Yes, and that's the thing is that the vulture is signifying there's going to be a lot of
Dead stuff.
dead stuff around. Okay, so again, this is not a noble announcement. This is a announcement that signifies a lot of terror coming.
Right.
Okay, a lot of bad stuff coming down the road. All right, so we're going to end it there because that's into chapter 8, and we'll pick it up with chapter 9 tomorrow, next week. Any questions or comments?
That's interesting.
Thanks, honey.
I did pay a lot of attention to the wind this week.
To the wind outside?
Outside,
Yeah.
yes, how grateful I am for it.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, you just take those things for granted.
Well, and I think that's part of our world today is the stuff that 200-300 years ago they relied on. We just kind of take for granted now. I mean, think plants won't be pollinated, trees won't be pollinated because there's no wind.
I thought everything being scorched up because
Yeah.
it couldn't cool things off,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Our cars won't be pollinated.
No more pollen cars. But okay. Anything
You
else?
did a really good job today.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
It is interesting.
So just the thing we gotta be careful of is not to get the speculation mixed in with the fact.
And the wormwood and the bitter water, wasn't that also in Exodus about the bitter water?
Yes.
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 And Moses.
Yes. And, next week I'll have a slide that'll kind of compare, Chuck Missler kind of did an interesting study of the plagues of Egypt with the 7 trumpets. And it's kind of, it is interesting. I would never in a million years thought of it. But that's the way Chuck Missler is. But it's kind of an interesting little comparison.
The plagues with
The plagues plus the trumpets, yes. An understanding that the plagues were localized. It was Egypt that was being impacted, not the whole world. But at any rate. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. All right, well, let's close in prayer then. Our dear Father, we just again thank you for this day and for this opportunity to be here. We thank you for your word, for the wisdom and knowledge that's there for us. I pray that you would just continue to give us hearts and minds that desire to dig deep and to learn what it is that you have for us. We pray that you would bless this study as we move forward. And I just be with us as we go through this week. I pray that the lives that we live will bring honor and glory to you. In your name I pray, amen.